Okay, good morning all of you. Are you able to hear me? If you have any hearing or this audio problem, please let me know. Yesterday there was some problem from my side. I am unable to hear the questions that were asked. And if there are any questions related to yesterday's class, assignment, and other related issues, you can raise it at this stage. Any questions? And let me summarize what we have done. So far we looked at design of flexural or members, structural members for flexure, okay? Limit state of collapse under flexure. Not only by limit state method, we also learned how to do it with working stress method, okay? And now up to whatever is covered till yesterday, that's going to be there for your quiz on 18th. Okay, and now if there are no further questions, let me proceed. And if you have any questions or anything, you can raise it. And today Professor Amlan is also there, so he will be keeping a watch on any questions that are being asked and other things. Okay, so let me go to the presentation. So please see IS 456. IS 456. Please see what we covered is limit state of collapse under flexure. This is what we looked at earlier. And from today, in the next few classes, we'll be focusing on limit state of collapse under shear. Limit state of collapse under shear. So whatever members we designed, so far we provided only flexural reinforcement, running along the length of the beam. Okay. So what is the shear? How to take care of the shear? So let's go through the codal provisions in today's class, and we'll try to understand in detail in the subsequent classes. Okay, so limit state of collapse under shear, it's given in page 72, 73 as well as 74. Okay, and the corresponding explanation and also some of the design tables for design purpose, they are given in SP16. In SP16 also there is a section shear and torsion. Section 4, shear and torsion. Okay. And here you may find some additional information what is not mentioned in IS 456 2000. In addition, it also gives you introduction to two tables, table 62 and table 63 in SP 16. Table 62 and table 63, they are given for two different grades of steel, and they have, with the help of that, we'll be able to get the information about how much shear reinforcement we need to provide. So we'll go in detail, okay, on this. So let me go to IS 456. And once again, please note that in tomorrow's class or in subsequent classes, we'll learn in detail. But let's go through the codal provisions at this stage. So as per the code, nominal shear stress. And you have a flexural member, you have a beam, and let's assume it is subjected to some loading. And from your structural analysis, concepts as well as some portion of your mechanics of materials, you may be able to, once the loading is given, once the boundary conditions are given, you should be able to find shear force at any location along the length of the beam, and also bending moment along the length of the beam, and you should be able to draw shear force diagram, bending moment diagram. Okay, so shear force at any section you will be able to estimate it from your concepts of structural analysis. So once you get your shear force, how to get the shear stress or nominal shear stress? Nominal shear stress in beams of uniform depth shall be obtained by the following equation. And please note that this shear stress is going to vary along the length of the beam as well as along the depth of the beam. Okay, along the cross section, along the depth, shear stress is going to be varying. How shear stress distribution is going to be? How shear stress distribution is going to be across the depth for a rectangular section? You please go back to your mechanics of materials and revise those concepts before you come for tomorrow's class. And also how the bending, the stress due to bending, or it's called normal stress. Because of bending, normal stress is going to be developed. So how this stress due to bending is going to vary across the depth of the section. You also revise those details for at least simply supported beam. Okay, simply supported beam, how the stress is going to be varying, and how the stress is going to be varying for shear stress, how the stress variation is going to be across the depth of the section. That you revise it. It's going to be once you know the shear force and once you know the bending moment at any section, you should be able to get an idea about how the shear stress distribution is going to be, how the bending stress distribution is going to be. You revise those concepts, and where the end conditions or boundary conditions is going to make differences. The value of the shear force at a particular section is going to depend on your boundary conditions. Okay, and also similarly, value of bending moment at a section is going to depend on your boundary conditions as well as the applied loading. Anyway, once the shear force is known at a section, shear stress or the stress that you are going to use for your design, nominal shear stress for beams of uniform depth, is given by this formula. It's nothing but force divided by the cross section. Please note that here it is not B subscript D, it is B small b times small d. You please make a note of that. There is a small typing error here. It's not subscript, it is B times D. Now you have already know how to design a rectangular section and also how to analyze a rectangular section. B, you know what is B? B is the width of the section or breadth of the section, breadth of the member, and D is your effective depth. And once you know the shear force at a particular section, you should be able to calculate shear stress, nominal shear stress. And whatever this formula, this equation is there, that is applicable for beams of uniform depth. And as a part of your structural analysis, as well as your mechanics of materials, if you take a cantilever beam, okay, if the cantilever beam is subjected to uniformly distributed load or even point load at the tip of the cantilever, you know how the bending moment is going to be varying, you know how the shear force is going to be varying. Bending moment is going to be maximum at the support of the cantilever, and bending moment is going to be zero at the free end or at the tip of the cantilever. At the tip of the cantilever, bending moment is going to be zero, and bending moment is going to be varying in certain fashion depending on the loading and it's going to be having maximum value at the support. And if you go back to your mechanics of materials, once the bending moment is known, bending stress Fy or sigma y is given by bending moment divided by the section modulus. You just go back to your mechanics of materials and try to revise those concepts. Fy due to bending is going to be given by m divided by z. M is your bending moment at that particular section, or you can, if you want, you can use mu. Mu is the bending moment at that at a particular section that you are interested, and z is the section modulus. Section modulus is going to depend on the shape of the section, whether it's a rectangle or triangle or it's a circle or whatever shape. So for rectangular section, section modulus is given by BD square divided by 6. BD square divided by 6. Just go back to your mechanics of materials and revise it. So once you know bending moment at any section modulus is going to depend on your the cross-sectional dimensions. So you can estimate bending stress. You can estimate the bending stress. Okay. And now that is the bending stress due to the applied loading. Okay. Bending stress due to the applied loading. And now this here we have the nominal shear stress, and this is for beams of uniform depth, and nominal shear stress for beams having varying depth is slightly different. It's slightly different. Why this difference? That's what I'm trying to explain. So just now I mentioned bending stress Fy is equal to m divided by z. Z is section modulus, which is given by BD square divided by 6. And you can see bending moment is maximum at the support for a cantilever, and it's equal to 0 at the tip of the cantilever, okay, at the free end. So you can see the depth of the section need not be constant throughout the length of the cantilever. Depth of the section can be maximum at the support, and it can be having some minimum value, or theoretically speaking, it can be 0 at the tip of the cantilever. Okay, but from practical consideration, we are going to have some depth. So a cantilever can have minimum depth at the tip of the free end and maximum required depth at the fixed end. So depth can be varying. So that is the reason this kind of section is given here, in the sense that this kind of category is given here. Beams of varying depth. Depth of the beam need not be constant or uniform. So if that is the case, if the depth of the beam is varying, and you need to keep a watch on how this depth is varying. Is the depth is increasing as the bending moment is increasing, or is the depth is decreasing as the bending moment is decreasing? So let's see this formula, then you will understand better. Nominal shear stress when the beam is having varying depth is given by this equation. Please note that this equation is going to degenerate to this equation if the depth variation is 0. You can cross check whether this is going to be equal to this. In case if you substitute in this equation, the special case of uniform depth, this equation should degenerate to this equation. Okay, now let's go through this. So nominal shear stress, when the depth of the beam is varying, is going to depend not only on shear force at that particular section that you are interested, and B times D of the section dimensions. Actually, VU divided by BD is what is there for uniform section. Additional term is MU divided by D tan beta, and MU divided by D. MU is nothing but bending moment at that section. Bending moment at that section that you are interested, wherever you are interested in trying to find the nominal shear stress. And what about beta? Beta is the angle between top and bottom edges. Top and bottom edges of the beam, that you keep in mind. Beta is the angle between top and bottom edges. Okay. And if the two edges are parallel, what is going to be beta and what is going to be tan beta, and whether this equation is going to reduce or this equation is going to degenerate to this or not, you please check it. Okay. So bending moment at a particular section is also required to calculate the nominal shear stress for beams of varying depth. That you keep in mind. And there is something else here, plus or minus. When I need to take plus, when I need to take minus, that is also given here. Negative sign in the formula applies when bending moment increases. MU increases numerically, only numerical value, not with sign. When bending moment increases numerically in the same direction as the effective depth D. In the same direction as effective depth D increases. If both bending moment is increasing in the same direction as effective depth, or effective depth is increasing in the same direction as bending moment, then negative sign, otherwise it's a positive sign. Positive sign when moment decreases numerically in this direction. In this direction, in the sense, in the direction in which effective depth is increasing. Any questions here? So given a section, if the section turns out to be having varying depth, and also once the loading is given, you should be able to find what is bending moment at any section and what is shear force at any section. Based on that information, you can see whether the variation or the increase in bending moment is the same direction as increase in the effective depth or not. Based on that, you should be able to decide plus or minus sign here and get the nominal shear stress. Okay. So whatever is given in this section, 40.1, in 40.1 is giving you the relations, how to calculate nominal shear stress given the section of the beam, okay, and given the shear force and bending moment at a particular section that you are interested. Okay, once you get the nominal shear stress, this is the shear stress to which we need to actually, or we need to take care in our design. So now, please note that concrete inherently, even when you are not going to provide additional reinforcement for taking care of shear, inherently concrete is going to possess some amount of resistance to take shear. Some amount of resistance is going to be there. And we'll see, that is all given in table 19 and 20. Okay, and we'll see that. Okay, and now whatever I just mentioned, that is what is given in 40.2. Okay, I calculated nominal shear stress. Now, what about the strength of the concrete? Have some strength of, you already know how to design and analyze member, a flexural member, or member which is having only flexural reinforcement. So you know what is the grade of concrete and how much amount of flexural steel that you provided, you already know. So once I provide that much flexural steel, that much steel in the tension region, when I provided, and whatever grade of concrete I used, inherently it's going to have some strength. What is its strength? What is that strength? Design shear strength of concrete. The design shear strength of concrete in beams without shear reinforcement is given in table 19. Okay, so you calculated shear stress. Now you need to find out what is this shear strength of the beam, and then if the nominal shear stress is less than the shear strength of the beam, or if it is greater than the shear strength of the beam, then we need to decide what to do. Those details will go through it in the subsequent steps. So now let's see this design shear strength of concrete in beams without shear reinforcement. It's given in table 19. So table 19 is giving you design shear strength of concrete. Obviously, you can easily guess design shear strength is going to depend on the grade of concrete. So it's function of grade of concrete. Okay. In addition, it's also going to be a function of what is the percentage of tensile steel that you provided. We will understand. We will go in detail and try to understand why it is function of percentage of tensile steel as we progress in the subsequent classes or as in this class. Okay, so at this stage, what I suggest is you focus or try to understand how to get the design shear strength of concrete, making use of table 19 and IS 456. So to read or to estimate the design shear strength of concrete using IS 456 2000, you need to know what is the grade of concrete and also what is the percentage of tensile steel that you provided. Now I think you should be able to appreciate why we are trying to learn this design for shear after designing for flexure. When you design for flexure, then only you will be knowing this percentage of tensile steel. Okay, so now let's also know here it's given. You can easily read once you know the percentage of tensile steel, depending on the grade of concrete that you adopt, you can directly read from here. And in between, you can interpolate. And also not only that, please note that as a good student, you should always try to question from where this chart is prepared or from where this table is prepared. That information is given in SP16. So that entire table here, actually this is given for old version of code. That's why you can read here design shear strength of concrete given in table 13. It's not table 13 as per IS 456. It is table 19, where the table 19, how it is actually generated, it's based on this equation. Okay, and tau c, please note that shear, the convention is you already have undergone structural analysis course as well as mechanics of materials. Standard textbooks, the convention of denoting this, representing this shear stress is using the Greek letter tau. So tau c is the design shear strength of concrete, which is going to depend on FCK value. That table 19 I have shown you, it's function of the grade of concrete, and also beta here it is given, the equation or expression for beta is given here, and it's going to be a function of your tensile reinforcement. Okay, any questions? So table 19 is generated using this. So if you don't, please note that this table, reading from the table and other things, when there is no digitization or when the computational power is not that much. Suppose you want to, when you are solving this or designing and analyzing by generating Excel sheets, such kind of stuff, you don't need to go and read this table in your Excel program or some other program, you can directly code this equation. You can directly code this equation, which is going to be a function of your grade of concrete, percentage of steel, tensile steel. Any questions? And what is this? Here, table 61, you can see the values of tau c corresponding to PT. PT is the percentage of tensile steel varying from 0.2 to 3 at intervals of 0.1 are given in table 61 for different grades of concrete. So let's see that. Table 61. So basically this is same as what is given in IS 456. It's same as what is given in IS 456. Okay, you can see at least the last column or slightly maybe they are different. You can actually generate at least some of the values are matched. It all depends on how you round it off. Okay. Any questions? So table 19 or the equation that is given in SP16, making use of that, you should be able to find design shear strength of concrete. And let's read this note as well. Okay, the percentage, here it's mentioned percentage of tensile steel, and there is some condition on this. The term AS is the area of longitudinal tension reinforcement which continues at least one effective depth beyond the section being considered. Please note that shear stress is going to be different at different sections along the length of the beam. And also I mentioned to you, whatever tensile reinforcement that you provided, it's going to depend on the bending moment. Bending moment along the length of the beam is going to vary. So you can also cut tile, or you can have different amounts of steel at different sections. Steel need not be uniform along the length of the beam. Okay, whatever steel that you arrived at so far for flexure, it need not be same everywhere along the length of the beam. Wherever bending moment is less, you can cut tile some amount of steel. But cut tiling doesn't mean that you immediately chop off some amount of steel beyond a section where it is not required. You need to ensure that sufficient anchorage is there. Otherwise, tensile steel is going to be pulled out. So those details we are going to look at a later stage. So here, some in this note it is mentioned AS should be the area of longitudinal tension reinforcement which continues at least one effective depth beyond the section where you are looking at. Beyond the section being considered except at support. Okay, that you have to keep in mind. Any questions? Professor Amlan, you want to add something here?
Yeah, I would just say that first of all, the shear stress expression, it's an average shear stress. It's like a nominal shear stress. The actual shear stress is much more complicated, especially after the section cracks. Hence, you have to understand that the computations are based on just like a nominally considered average shear stress.
Any questions? So far what we looked at in today's class, given a beam, you please keep a watch on whether the depth is varying or depth is uniform. If depth is uniform, nominal how to calculate nominal shear stress equation is given in IS 456. And also if the depth is varying, different expression you need to use, get the nominal shear stress. And that is the shear stress for which this beam has to withstand. But inherently beam is going to have certain strength, and that strength, design strength, is going to depend on grade of concrete, percentage of tensile steel that is provided. That can be read out from table 19 or the equation that is given in SP60. Okay, so now you with given a section and the loading details, you should be able to get these two. Okay, and now let's go further. Here under section 40.2, 40.2.1 is talking about table 19, and after that it is talking about slabs. This section we'll see at a later stage, as well as this section. This section is talking about members under axial compression, shear strength of members under axial compression, that we look at when we are looking at design of columns. Okay, let's directly jump to this one, this section 40.2.3 with shear reinforcement. So now we got tau v. Tau v is nothing but nominal shear stress, and we also got what is tau c. Tau c is the design shear strength. So now how tau v compares with tau c, based on that, whether we require to provide shear reinforcement or not required, that will be decided. So with shear reinforcement, or let's go through, so sorry, let's skip these two sections. In a while we'll come back. This is the section we need to look at, design of shear reinforcement. So now you got tau v and tau c. When tau v exceeds tau c, when tau v, that is nominal shear stress that is coming because of the loading, is exceeding the design shear strength given in table 19, shear reinforcement shall be provided in the following forms. Shear reinforcement can be provided as vertical stirrups. What is this vertical stirrup? Details we'll look at it, but at this stage you can make a note that the shear reinforcement can be in the form of vertical stirrups or bent up bars with stirrups. Bent up bars in the sense I just mentioned, whatever tensile reinforcement that you provided based on the bending moment or the maximum bending moment, that need not be same everywhere. In the sense, along the length of the beam, same amount of reinforcement may not be required. Tension reinforcement. Some of the reinforcement you can actually curtail or bend it up. Some of the reinforcement you can bend up. So what this is saying is, in addition to the stirrups, you also have bent up bars. Then what is going to be, or that is one of the options. You can have vertical stirrups alone, or vertical stirrup or bent up bars along with vertical stirrups, or the other option is inclined stirrups. Inclined stirrups. So these are the various ways in which you can actually take care of the shear that is missing here. Missing in the sense, what is the difference between the nominal shear stress and design shear strength? You find that difference, that is the shear you need to take care of. That shear can be taken care of by any of these options: vertical stirrups, bent up bars with stirrups, or inclined stirrups. Okay, so we'll proceed further below in a while. Let's understand whatever is missed out here. Okay, just now we noted when tau v exceeds tau c, we need to provide shear reinforcement, and we also noted that it can be provided in three forms. Option is yours. It can be provided as vertical stirrups, or a combination of bent up bars and vertical stirrups, or inclined stirrups. But here something else is also mentioned. Even when you provide shear reinforcement, okay, I designed for the balance shear that I need to take care, I designed for it. Even when you do it, under no circumstances, even with shear reinforcement, shall nominal stress in beams tau v exceeds tau c max. You see this one. Just now we provided shear reinforcement for whatever amount, that is the difference between tau v and tau c. But we also need to limit. We also need to limit whatever nominal shear stress that is coming. That is whatever nominal shear stress that is coming. We need to limit only to tau c max, which is given in table 20, which is going to be a function of your grade of concrete. So tau c is given here. Maximum shear stress that is permitted depending on the grade of concrete that you are adopting for your member. This is the maximum value. Even if you provide shear reinforcement, the code is putting a ceiling. You cannot exceed this. What is it? What could be the reason for this? What could be the reason for this? The reason is shear failure is actually going to be catastrophic. Shear failure is going to be catastrophic. It's going to be sudden failure. So to avoid taking such risks, code is putting a ceiling for a particular grade of concrete. Even if you provide shear reinforcement, you cannot, for beams, please note that this is for beams, cannot exceed this value. Okay, so where this can be used, when you are analyzing a section, suppose shear reinforcement details are also given to you, and based on the shear reinforcement that is provided, if you want to estimate shear capacity of that section, you can make use of this information. So you need to make use of this maximum shear stress. Okay, anyway, we'll see, that will be you will get a better idea when we solve some problems. Okay, so that is about some information about this tau c max. And now this is for slabs. We'll come back to it at a later stage. Just now I mentioned when I'm referring table 20, whatever values that are given there are for beams. For slabs, the value tau c max, you can read this one. For solid slabs, nominal shear stress shall not exceed half the appropriate values given in table 20. So for slabs, the tau c max or whatever is given in table 20, you need to take half of that value. Anyway, we'll come back to this at a later stage because our focus is now on beams, flexural members. So we'll see this at a later stage. And now also let's read this one. We did not look at this one earlier. And now you have tau v and tau c. And now tau v, if it turns out to be exceeding tau c, then you provide the shear reinforcement. But if it is less than tau c, if it is less than tau c given in table 19, still you need to provide minimum shear reinforcement. Still you need to provide minimum shear reinforcement. And we'll see the details of it when we are designing the beams. Okay, so but you need to keep in mind shear reinforcement needs to be provided even when tau v is less than tau c. And also you need to keep in mind under any circumstances where even if you provide shear reinforcement, tau v shall not exceed tau c max. So those 2 points you keep in mind. Okay, so now let's come back to this one, design shear reinforcement. We already looked at it. There are 3 forms of shear reinforcement, 3 forms in which we can provide shear reinforcement: vertical stirrups, bent up bars with stirrups, and inclined stirrups. Obviously, when you say inclined stirrup or vertical stirrup, what do you mean by vertical stirrup? If you take along the length of the beam, the stirrup is going to be this leg of the stirrup is going to be perpendicular to the length of the beam. Angle is going to be 90 degrees. An inclined stirrup is a stirrup which is at an inclination with respect to the longitudinal axis. That you keep in mind. Okay. Anyway, let's read this. When bent up bars are provided, their contribution towards shear reinforcement shall not be more than half that of the total shear reinforcement. When there is a combination of bent up bars and vertical stirrups, first of all, we are providing shear reinforcement when tau v exceeds tau c, and then let's assume that difference tau v minus tau c we are taking care using a combination of bent up bars and vertical stirrups. Okay, what this clause or what this is saying in the code is the contribution of the bent up bars shall not be more than half of tau v minus tau c. Okay, so that you keep in mind, or we have to take care of it when we are actually designing the shear reinforcement and when we opt for this combination of bent up bars and vertical stirrups. And let's read this. Shear reinforcement shall be provided to carry shear. Just now, whatever we discussed, it's all in terms of tau v and tau c, or tau v and tau c and tau c max. If you want to talk in terms of shear force is given by stress multiplied by cross-sectional dimensions. So here it is given in terms of stress or shear. Shear reinforcement shall be provided to carry shear equal to the difference tau u. Tau u is or vu. Vu is the actual shear force. Tell me, some disturbance is coming.
You have no idea where to go, do you? Come with me.
Pandya, some disturbance is coming. Mute your mic. Any questions? You need to keep your IS 456 open, okay? And now VU is actually the shear force at that particular section. So the shear reinforcement shall be provided for VU minus tau c multiplied by BD. What is tau c? Is a shear strength of this particular member, which is going to depend on grade of concrete as well as the percentage of tensile steel. So once you get the shear strength, you multiply with cross-sectional dimensions B times D. That is going to give you idea about how much shear force that particular section can withstand. And VU is the actual shear that is coming, shear force at that particular section. So you need to provide shear reinforcement for difference between these two. And the difference between these two, VU minus tau c BD, the difference is denoted with this letter VUS. VUS. Okay. So now once you find VUS, if it is vertical stirrups, it is given by this equation. We will understand in tomorrow's class how this equation is obtained. If it is vertical stirrup, this VUS is there. You can calculate it once you know the shear force that is coming at the section. Once you have the section details, you can calculate this part. You take the difference between those two. That is going to be your VUS. So we need to design the shear reinforcement for that. And if you opt for vertical stirrups, this is the equation that is relating VUS with the area of stirrups that you need to provide and spacing of the stirrups. Fy, you are familiar with Fy. Fy depends on the grade of steel, and D is the effective depth. So ASV is the total cross-sectional area of stirrup legs or bent up bars within a distance SV. We will understand in tomorrow's class, we'll understand how this equation is obtained. Okay, then you will get a better feel for it, and it's not necessary that you mug up this equation. You can easily derive whenever it is required. And this is for vertical stirrups. And if you have a combination of please note that vertical stirrup is a special case of inclined stirrup. Vertical stirrup is a special case of inclined stirrup. And you take a note of this equation. You take a note of this equation. Take a note of that equation. So that equation, whatever is highlighted, that is more general. If you understand how that equation is obtained, you can degenerate it to the first or the third equation that is appearing in this page. So this is more general, this equation. We'll understand in tomorrow's class how this is obtained. And for vertical stirrups, please note that here it is for a combination of inclined stirrups as well as bent up bars. And if you have only vertical or inclined stirrups, if you have only inclined stirrups, then the expression is going to be only this one. Cosine alpha is not going to be there. And there is a printing mistake. It's 0.87. Okay, 0.87 here. And now, if you take take a note of whatever I just mentioned for inclined stirrups. For inclined stirrups, this is the part, and this vertical stirrup is a special case of inclined stirrup where the angle is 90 degrees. Alpha is 90. So you can easily see this degenerates to this one. And what about this part? This is contribution from the bent up bars. This is the contribution from the bent up bars. Okay. Or we'll understand what is this cos alpha. It's not actually whatever I just mentioned. I want to take it back. It's not actually contribution from bent up bars. It depends on how the crack is actually intersecting and other things. We'll see in detail in tomorrow's class. We'll see in detail in tomorrow's class. Okay. And alpha. What is this alpha? That you make a note. Angle between the inclined stirrup or bent up bars and the axis of the member, and it shall not be less than 45 degrees. That you keep in mind. And now once you understand this equation and how you got this equation, if it is a group or a single bar, this one bent up bar, then VUS is equal to this. So please note that VUS can be calculated using this, and once you know VUS, you can easily estimate what is the area of steel, area of shear reinforcement that is required. And if you see this equation, you also need to know what is the spacing. So prior to you try to find what is the area of steel, you need to assume at what spacing I'm going to provide the shear reinforcement. At what spacing shear reinforcement can be provided. That once you know that, you can estimate what is the S. And also what is the spacing of shear reinforcement, what is the maximum spacing and other things that is given in the code IS 456. Your spacing should be within the prescribed limits that are given in IS 456. Okay, and where we have seen in all the equations, we have seen B is there. If it is a flanged section, replace with BW. Okay, and rest of the quantities are all self-explanatory. So with this, in tomorrow's class, we'll proceed further, and this is not the end. Near to the supports, you can enhance. Code is allowing you to take advantage of that. Enhance shear strength of sections close to the support. That we'll see if it is possible. We'll cover this. Otherwise, it will be covered in advanced courses. Okay. And one more note: where more than one type of shear reinforcement is used to reinforce the same portion of beam, total shear resistance shall be computed as sum of the resistance of various types separately. So suppose when you have bent up bars, when you have inclined stirrups Also, you have vertical stirrups. You find the contribution of each of these and add them together. That is going to be your total shear capacity of that section. Okay. And areas of stirrup shall not be less than the minimum specified. So we'll see that when we are actually solving some examples. Obviously, we are going to go through and comply with all these requirements. Okay. Any questions? So in tomorrow's class, we'll go in detail how these equations are obtained. I hope you got some idea about this design for shear. And I suggest all of you please revise your mechanics of materials, structural analysis concepts before you come for tomorrow's class. Okay, just a minute. Let me take attendance. And if you have any questions, you can raise those questions now. Any questions? Professor Amlan, you want to add anything? Professor Amlan? I think he already left. Okay, if you don't have any questions, thank you. Tomorrow, let's meet.